Meeting to order. Thank you, Kirsten. Okay, who would like to lead the patriotic exercise? Marla?
Good afternoon. If you'd
Good
please
afternoon.
stand, place your right hand on your heart and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America, the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible.
liberty and justice for all. Thank you. May I please have my picture?
What?
I want my picture with the board president.
Oh, right.
In 5 years, this is the first time I got to do the pledge.
Oh, wow. Well, then I'll keep calling on you.
I was going to say, I'm
Oh,
hearing,
no,
I'm
just
hearing that
kidding,
as a
just kidding.
permanent volunteer.
All right. Roll call. Dan DeVoy,
I'm here.
Doug Brown,
Here.
Lisa Mudd,
Here.
Elizabeth Kendall,
Here.
Florence Huang here. Okay, approval of today's agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda for today?
I move to approve.
Thank you, Dan. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Thank you, Doug. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you, Lisa. Okay, public statements related to agenda items. Is there anybody here looking to make a public statement?
No, President Wong.
All right, so I am not going to read the little blurb after that. It's available on the agenda itself. Item 6, administration approval of map for transitioning from at-large to by trustee area elections.
Great.
And
Thank you,
this
Trustee
is-
Wong. Yes, we have the maps. We've had our multiple hearings. We've had one set of revisions. We did get one further public comment, which I'll read to the board at this time since we're virtual. And the comment is, I think A and C seem fine. My only observation is that one of the areas doesn't have a school in it, while others have 2 or 3. I assume you've worked this out and it doesn't impact the intention of the districting. So that was discussed the other evening. The one area, which is area 3, that does not
Mine.
which does not have a school physically located in the actual district, represents BIS as well as currently three elementary areas, not 4, which is what I thought the other night. It's 3.
And Chris, I'd just make the point that for the public that we all know, which is that the district doesn't represent a specific school, but rather represents the district as a whole. So it's not critical that each district have a school located there.
Correct.
Okay, so technically we don't have to have another public hearing, but we still can discuss your preferences. Does anybody want to open with that?
I had a question regarding the data, Chris. Question for you. We're giving 2 sets of data for each one. I noticed this last night. One set of data is based on the 2020 census, and another set of data says citizens by voting age population estimate between 2015 and 2019. What is that estimate based off of, and why do we use population estimates not from the census from 2015 to 2019? Because I was just concerned when I looked at that data. Wow, the pandemic happened in 2020. We've lost population since then. And how accurate is data from 2015 to 2019? And what is the definition of a citizen by voting age population?
So citizen by voting age population are people that are eligible to vote, whether they actually register to vote or not. And so it's an extrapolation from the census data of the number of folks that are reported. Now, of course, a lot of census data is actually extrapolated, right? So assuming that an area gets really high census response, let's say 80%, then that establishes a baseline, which then the census extrapolates the rest of the information for a voting block and for an area. And there's a fairly long history as to the accuracy, which is how they've developed that. And so what you're noticing is that one is the actual data and the other one is the extrapolation of the data, which fills in the missing respondents with the data trends that they're noticing from the actual respondents.
So when it says then under citizens voting age population 2015 to 2019, that the population was approximately 20,000, but then the census, our population jumps up to 32,000. Does that mean there's either 12,000 children or just non-voters in Burlingame?
Correct. And that can be a combination in Burlingame of people that are not old enough to vote, people that are old enough but haven't registered, or people that are old enough and are not eligible.
Okay. And why do we use 2015 to 2019 rather than just extrapolate data from the 2020 census to determine voting age population in the year 2020?
Because they have to have a trend analysis to actually establish something, and a trend analysis is usually a minimum of 3 to 5 years. And so they're taking the 5 years prior to the estimation being given. So to do one for 2022, let's say we magically produced one today, we would need the one from 21, 20, 19, 18, and 17 to establish a 5-year trend analysis to give you a good, accurate ballpark. Now that they're still estimations, sort of like when I give my financial discussions and I say it's a projection. So it's the best guess based on the mathematical modeling that the Census Data Department has.
Got it. Thank you for that explanation. That was very clear.
I do try. Thank you.
You like your data. Yes, yes.
I do like my data. Yeah.
So while you're talking, Dan, did you have any preference?
Yes, I have a preference for map B. B is in Bravo, because I think it gives us 2 diverse districts with majority minority, and it represents the historical divide on El Camino, which I have found in my time to be Burlingame kind of the #1 thing people talk about, and it bridges communities and makes trustees responsible for both. I know the other 2 maps tried and they were stuck with a demographic anomaly, barely being able to cross El Camino, and they did the best they could. That's just the way demographics work.
Hey, Dan, maybe I'm looking at it differently, but I'm actually seeing A and C as the 2 that have the greatest concentration of, which I'll use as a proxy, sort of non-white population in a single district if we're trying to get representation. So just want to make sure I'm looking at it the same way you are.
I'm looking at scenario B, areas 4 and 5 because we talked about this at the last meeting and I asked about this, and someone on the board said, no, you add up the total non-white population. And so when I look at trustee area 4 and 5 on map B, 46.3% Caucasian, 48%, therefore the remaining is the majority minority. And so that's why I thought that was my understanding of the data from our last meeting.
So I think, so the spirit of the Voting Rights Act is really about looking at like what your actual city is like and which group actually is sort of like your, let's say, highest minority group. And in Burlingame, it's Asian. And so the spirit of the act would be to try to have a district where it's as much as possible, you kind of have that particular minority group have a fairly high representation so that you're more likely, based on theories or how this should work, have a person of that minority group would have a easier time getting elected.
So we should not then look at minority majority as in adding up all minority groups together.
Exactly, because what B actually does is it has more of almost a mini sample of Burlingame as a whole, kind of across all the areas, which then would kind of defeat the purpose of the Voting Rights Act, which is to enable a group that's a pretty large segment of a population to have a higher chance of voting someone in who represents that group. If we have a kind of even distribution of what counts as sort of a minority group represented in all the different areas, then it's no better than at large.
I
Does that make
understand.
sense?
No, I thought that was very well represented. Thank you.
Does anybody
Yeah,
else?
and in
have-
my view, it's probably not fair to my thinking is more along what you're saying, Florence, and that, I mean, I'm probably the one who brought up that proxy of the percent non-white, but to assume that those groups all vote together or have common interests doesn't seem quite right. So I'm more inclined to pick one of the maps that has greater, representation of Asian, which is our biggest minority group. So, but I don't actually have a clear preference between A or C, but I do have a preference for those two. And I think both of the public comments that we got were along the same lines, just for what it's worth.
That was my follow-up question, is what trustees saw as the distinction between A and C, because I didn't quite, I mean, when I look at the maps, I have to look at them very carefully to see what the difference is. There's one squiggly line, it looks like, towards the southern part of town.
Yeah, there's, so if you look at Trustee Area 1 and Area 3, there is a changing of the line in the boundary. I think it goes up, instead of being Drake, it's Vancouver. Like Vancouver is in A and Drake is in C. And so what happens if you actually look in the total populations and across, so for me, I'm not a big fan of map B. I'm comparing maps A and C. The kind of evenness of actual numbers of people in each area seems better in C. If I look at it across. Trustee Area 3 has the fewest number of people currently in map C, but that is also an area where there's going to be a whole bunch of housing development coming online. So I actually think that just because Area 3 looks lower in population now compared to the others, that if we keep in mind there will be a lot of new development in Trustee Area 3, that it's okay that it's a little lower than the others.
Yeah, if you look at the voting population, it's actually 2 and 3 are lower. I think between A and C, the thing with C is that it has less variance. Like, I guess that's
Right.
what Florence was saying. So
Right.
I'll make one more comment about the El Camino distinction. It's not clear to me that it's beneficial to have multiple districts that cross, because if we think that that's a group of voters that potentially have a different perspective for whatever reason, there's maybe some value to having them in the same districts. They're better represented, but I personally don't think that's a significant issue, but I don't necessarily have a point of view on whether it's better to have multiple districts or a single district that crosses El Camino.
I think just because the way El Camino runs, it would have been very difficult to have a district that kind of runs that north to south that would be inclusive of most of El Camino, that would have been a weird district to create. And in this way, because I remember our conversation about trying to have the crossing El Camino in as many areas as possible is really, I think, because it just includes, I mean, I think it just includes a lot more apartments and renters in each district. And historically, I think, I mean, I don't have the numbers in front of me, but people who are renting in apartments are a little more transient as well. So they're not as stable in terms of being voters in our elections. So if you have one district that has all of like a fairly transient population, it probably isn't. My guess is it wouldn't be actually very well represented sort of Burlingame because people are very in and out.
I think the request was like, it was on area 4 and 5 because those were in B angled the other direction. But I think I came around to what Doug was saying, that you can see both sides of the issue. There could be ways to group people either way. That would be beneficial. But in the scenario B, you did have 4 and 5 going the other direction, and they didn't have the minority influence anyway, so it seemed like it would be okay. But yeah.
Yeah. So if I'm going, well, nobody, I'm going to say my preference is map C.
Yeah, I'll pile on that. I think I'm looking more closely at the voting age distribution than the total population distribution, and it's a pretty minor difference, but it seems like that one does slightly better on the groupings and the other points that you made. I could be easily convinced for A, but my preference would be C. Love to hear Elizabeth and Lisa's thoughts as well.
Yeah, but I was coming around to C as well. So
My
is it-
preference is with, I'm also a C. So
Because
sorry,
it-
Elizabeth.
Yeah, that's okay, because it preserves that Asian, well, it has the Asian voting block and has the lower variance. So those were my two reasons for going with C.
And
My preference for A was just, as I mentioned in our last meeting, that trustee area 2 has a higher likelihood of opening up to, I mean, it has a higher percentage of Asian, it has a higher percentage of Black African American, it has a higher percentage of races, and
you're kind of in and out, Lisa.
I just thought there was more of an opportunity for a voice.
Are you referencing the voting age population numbers or the?
I'm not sure if you guys can even hear me. I'm sorry.
You're kind of choppy.
Yeah, sorry. Well, my preference is for A, and my second preference is for C. So I can be on
Can you
What-
repeat that, Lisa?
2020.
Can you like move your car to a different spot or something?
So what I heard, Lisa, correct me if I misheard, but that you prefer A, but you're okay with C, and you're looking at the census numbers, not the voting age numbers.
Oh gosh, I'm sorry.
Don't apologize, you're fine.
Yeah.
It's a virtual meeting.
I think we can hear you now. Can you say something, Lisa? Lisa?
I'm not sure if you can hear me now. I'm moving my car.
Yeah, that's better.
Okay. And I wasn't able to hear you guys either. So I don't think it's fair for me to chime in a whole lot right now and disrupt the conversation flow, but my preference is for A. I'm also on board with C. The numbers that I was looking at are the 2020 census.
Okay.
And specifically, I was just looking at trustee area 2 because that was the area that kind of was identified as the area that has the highest percentage of an Asian population.
When I compare C to A, I'm actually seeing higher Hispanic Latino representation for area 2 in C?
Oh, yeah, so I see it for Asian, Black African American, and 2 or more races. And in scenario A, and then yes, in the Hispanic Latino, I see a high percentage in 2. Or sorry, it's in C.
Well, so in C, I see a higher Asian and also higher Hispanic Latino, both in C.
Yes, I'm not saying Hispanic Latino.
That's in area 4, right? You're looking at area 4 for,
Oh, okay. I thought she was talking about area 2.
well, but the highest would be area 4.
Talking about area 2, trustee area 2 in scenario A, 41.1% of Asian population versus, oh yeah, okay. Sorry. Let's do this in your car. So scenario A, the Asian population is 41.4%, 41.1% in trustee area 2.
44.1?
Mm-hmm. And then in in scenario C, it's 44.2, so a little bit of a difference. But then it also has 0.7 for Black African American versus 0.6. And I'm not sure that this is the right way to be looking at it. And this is just something that stuck out to me. And then 2 or more races, 6% versus 5.9%. I mean, it's such a tiny fraction of a difference, but
yeah, I mean, yeah. Though, yes, I would agree that those seem like tiny differences, and also, you know, for the Asian and Hispanic Latino, they're slightly higher in the C version, and those are our 2, I think, highest minority race groups, right, Chris?
okay. I mean, I'm very much on board with scenario C and A. So
Okay.
good to me.
Dan, did you want to say what your preference is?
Yeah, I'll just note I could not hear all of Lisa's rationale, so I apologize if I say something inconsistent in response. As I look at it between A and C, I have a preference for C as in Charlie. I think based on our conversation at the beginning of the meeting with Doug and Florence in terms of interpreting minority data, I think trustee area 2 and map C has ever so minuscule fractional more protection for the Asian population. I also think it's trustee area 4 that provides a slight more bump for Hispanic Latino population protection, also in map C. Other than that, I don't see a data difference, fractional difference of more support for Asian population, and slightly more than that protection for Hispanic voters. So for that reason, I would choose map C as in Charlie.
Okay. All right. So would someone like to make a motion to approve a particular map?
I move to approve map scenario C trustee districts.
Is there a second?
I'll second that.
Okay, so this is specifically a vote on trustee areas scenario C. So who is in favor of scenario C?
Aye.
How about you, Lisa?
Aye.
Lisa, okay,
Yep,
so
aye.
you're okay with C? I think she said aye.
Maybe she could do the thumbs up gesture, maybe, or something. There it is.
Uh-oh.
You
Yes.
raised your hand.
Oh, okay,
That's a
there's your
yes.
hand.
There it is.
All
Yep.
right, okay. So, all right, it's 5-0 for the maps for scenario
I
C.
did.
Okay. All right, so we're done with that, Chris?
Yes.
Okay. All right, so now we're going to move to item 7, human resources. A, CBEST waiver for Sarah Slavsky. Does anybody want to say anything about it or? Marla, you don't need anything? to
Sure,
say?
I'll go.
Okay,
Sure, I can go. Sarah Slasky is currently a TK teacher at Hoover. And the CBS requirement is the last requirement for Sarah to complete. This is Sarah's second year as a TK teacher for us. And we're excited to have her. And this waiver is being requested for her to continue teaching with us at Hoover. So we're bringing forward this waiver for her for this year.
all right. Is there a motion to approve the CBEST waiver for Sarah Slavsky?
I move to approve the CBEST waiver for Sarah Slasky.
Thanks, Dan. Is
I'll
there?
second.
Thank you, Lisa. All those in favor? Aye.
Great, thank you.
And okay, public statements related to non-agenda items.
There are none, President Wong.
Okay. And then, are we mushing this in with our emergency?
There is a brief closed and there is a separate Zoom invite so that it's only for trustees.
Okay, and
So we
then
will
we have to
close-
come back to this, right?
No, I'll report out. Not a problem. I'll report out unclosed.
Okay, so we don't need to come back to this Zoom meeting after
Kirsten?
we adjourn?
Let me ask for note taking. Kirsten?
It's up to you. You could come back to this one or the minutes, the written minutes are the official. So as long as you come back and do report out, then that is sufficient as well.
All right, so I think we do have to log back into this.
So to do the official report out, then you would come back to this open session meeting report out. Yes.
Okay, okay, so log
Kir-
out, go
so,
to the
yeah.
other one.
Yeah, so Kirsten will have to keep this one open for us. Everybody log out and log into the second one. It'll be 5 minutes or less.
Okay. Okay, so we're coming back to open session, closed session report, information received. And that's it. So next on our agenda is adjournment. Do we have a motion to adjourn?
A motion to adjourn.
All right, Elizabeth, and I'll second that motion. All those in favor to adjourn? Aye. Lisa, you want to adjourn?
Lisa said aye, if you
Yeah,
couldn't hear.
okay.
You said yes.
Great. Everybody have a great weekend.
Everybody take care. Thank you.
Thanks.
Thanks.
Bye.